Hey, this is Corey Barnes.
And this is Lisa Caperton, and you're listening to Her Turn to Talk. Good morning, Corey. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm
Good
blah.
morning, good morning.
I'm not good. I'm blah.
Is it still morning?
It is. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, it is.
It's before noon, so that's morning.
I took a nice walk at Davidson Mesa.
Oh, you already did?
So I'm like, what time is it?
I did some cleaning.
I met up with my buddy Nick, who I haven't seen in a while, from Massachusetts, from college, actually.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes, he happens to live here now. And it was beautiful, nice and clear. It's been so foggy. Last night was the Leonids meteor shower, and you couldn't see any of it because it was cloudy.
Oh, I didn't even know it was a meteor shower.
Yeah, it's one of the most popular, as in there's usually a lot of stars. And I was reading that back in 1966, that it was 40 to 50 shooting stars a minute, and just the whole sky was just filled with it, and that was the most recorded. But I was also thinking, the light pollution back then couldn't have been as bad as it is now.
Yeah.
1966. Well, not as bad as it is now, but there had to have been some.
Yeah.
But imagine that, looking up in the sky and seeing 40 to 50 shooting stars just going. I love shooting stars. It's cool. So that happened. I think you can go out tonight too. This podcast is going to come out later, so
it'll be way past.
Be able to go out tonight, but look out for next year. It's always around the same date. The Leonids, real cool. It's fun to go check those out. I've been thinking a lot about the sky. I like the sky. We don't look up as much as I'd like to.
I did something this weekend that was kind of cool. I actually found some useful information in one of those Facebook neighborhood group things.
What'd you find?
Sometimes you go out there and it's just people stirring up other people or talking trash or complaining. Yes. And sometimes it's just pure entertainment because it's some crazy stuff on there. Yep. But sometimes you can learn some stuff. And so somebody posted that they were doing some volunteer work for like the local.
That same woman that you've been following?
No, this was just in the neighborhood. I don't even know this person. But it was she was doing some volunteer work from like a local social services group. And she was saying, and this is something that I thought about thinking back to Jelly's interview, and she talked about, just different privileges that we all have that we just don't think about, right? And this was a great example. She was saying that she was doing some work with some social workers that were helping young people who were aging out of foster care. And a lot of times, these kids, if they don't have somewhere to go, they'll end up homeless. And so locally, these people are helping these kids get first apartments. But the social worker was saying how sad it was and heartbreaking that she had got a young man into an apartment and helped him get, help him get it, rent covered for a while, but how she left there feeling completely defeated because she left this young man in this apartment and he had nothing. You know what I mean? Like, he had nothing. And so this woman was asking in the neighborhood group of care packages for people. And so what you could do, she was like, just get a laundry basket or a trash can and fill it with things for like your first apartment. And like a pillow, a blanket, a plate, a cup, a, bowl, some, microwavable meals, and like shower curtain, toilet paper, paper towels, those kinds of items. And so yesterday we went and got a whole care package of stuff, and we took it to this woman. She gave everybody her address, privately, and then she set up a little thing on her porch to drop them off. But I thought, that's again a privilege that I have that I never thought about. These kids in foster care who age out, who still have nowhere to go and still have no one to take care of them. Mm-hmm. And what are they doing, and how they end up, if they don't have help, and how heartbreaking that would be to have, if you could put yourself in those shoes of having no family and no one really to help you. And then you get an apartment, but you still don't have anything, you know, and how like just some simple items might help make your first few nights, you know, a little bit better.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. That was just something I was like, oh, okay, here's some good stuff that can come out of these, what is it? The Nextdoor app and the Facebook group for the neighborhoods.
Yeah,
And
of
if you
course,
watch on
right?
there, you know, there's always all these opportunities to help people.
Yeah, those groups, people coming together to do good
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
And 'tis the season.
So I was like, oh, okay, like this is something different. Because everybody's, you know, not to say I don't want anybody to discourage from helping, you know, do all the other helpful things, but you have your standard holiday, you know, buy meals and, you know, buy toys for kids and all of those things. And they're all great. But this is something that's happening all year, you know, not that those other things aren't happening all year round, but
Yeah.
and it's just a different for me, and maybe other people already think about but it was something that I had never thought about that I was like, oh, I want to, you know, it just called to me and I was just like, oh, I want to do one of those. And it's such a small thing. You know, I think we spent like, you know, $100 or so, you know, it's not even cost, it has to be a lot. But, and I think it's any little thing, you know, a pillow, a blanket, or any little thing that you could do.
Toothbrush.
But I think anybody could do that, you know, go to your local social services department and I'm sure they can help you out and find people in need.
Oh, yeah.
So
the resources are everywhere.
and like I said, I'm having a hard week. I feel blah, and I don't know if it's hormones or a little bit of depression, and like I have no reason. everything's great in my life, but I'm just kind
You're
of
not a kid that just got out of foster care.
Yeah, but I was like, okay, like let's get out of myself here and like let's do something else.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, that's a little
Nice.
a little feel good moment.
Yeah, be a service. Getting out and about, thinking of others, right? We get out of our own heads.
Yeah.
It's good. I like that.
Yeah.
Do we have a website or anything like that
No,
that we can post on the website?
You know what? Like I said, I just found this on the Facebook. I would recommend anybody. Like I said, just go to your local your local social services department through your city or whatever, and ask them. And I think it's something that because it is social workers who are helping do that. So
yeah.
Or, you know, search through your Nextdoor app.
Yeah.
Weed through the crap. And there's always,
Nextdoor's different than Facebook. Right?
Yeah. They're two different ones, but it's kind of a lot of the same. I mean, sometimes it's pure entertainment gold. Like,
I see a lot of lost dogs and a lot of lost cats. Like,
there's a lot of stuff. Some people I see post stuff on there and I'm like, you're just looking to start shit because they will just post some random stuff that they're just, they're like, just looking.
Yeah. People get addicted to that shit.
It's crazy.
It's pretty annoying, especially in this pet sitting business.
Yeah.
People are checking in on their vacation. I saw on Nextdoor that this happened. I'm like, you're on vacation. Everything's great. But yes, it's really nice to hear that it can be used for these cool things.
It can be used for good.
Well, to bring it back around to my interest in looking up in the sky and checking out the clouds. We've had some really beautiful sunsets recently. And I've been sending, and the where the sun is this time of the year, it's cool. We get some interesting sunsets, different from any other time of the year. And I send my dad sunset alert texts, so he'll go outside and take pictures of the sunset.
That's cool.
So just in general, I was at a pet sitting house, and I was watching out the window, and I saw some of these glider planes flying around right in front of the Flatirons here in Boulder. And the glider planes, there may or may not be an engine, but the glider, you get towed up, and then the plane that's towing you lets go, and then I was imagining it must be completely silent up there because no engine and then you just glide back on down, and it must be just like flying like a bird, and which brought me to starting to think about, I don't know, she came out of nowhere, but our badass woman of the week, Amelia Earhart.
Yes.
And she may be best known for her numerous aviation records, but it is Amelia's legacy of unfaltering determination and her can-do attitude for equal treatment of women that certainly lives on today. Amelia was born in 1897 in Kansas, right next door here, but didn't board a plane until she was 23. And when she did, Amelia instantly became in love with flying. She took her first flying lesson a year later, and 2 years after that, she became the 16th woman to receive a pilot's license. Let's see when she got her pilot's license, she also got her first plane, and it was a bright yellow Kinner Airster named the Yellow Canary. And I think I've seen pictures of her in this little yellow canary. I'll have to find it.
We'll have to find it. We'll post
She's
it.
so
Yeah.
stinking cute. So Amelia set many records, like a lot of records.
How did she get a plane? Was she wealthy family?
I couldn't find that information.
I wonder if she had a wealthy family.
But she was obsessed. So I know for sure when living in Boston, Amelia wrote articles promoting flying. So I don't know if she got in with somebody because she was this article writer, and she got a plane. I don't know. She was part of the International Organization of Women Pilots, also known as the 99s. And she developed flying clothes for women for the 99s. And these clothes were advertised in Vogue.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
She might have been making her own money because she was around until she was 40 years old. So she might have started, she got her license when she was about 23, right? I said that? Yeah, 23. But she was around for a while. So who knows? And, taking these lessons, I'm sure it was someone else's plane. But anyway, Amelia set many records. On June 17th, 1928, she became the first woman to fly across the Atlantic with a team. So I think to myself, okay, she flew across, like starting in Boston, you flew across, here it is, the early 1900s, and she flew across with a team of people. Like, that's amazing. The first woman. So later, she became the first woman and second person ever to fly solo across the Atlantic. So the second time she's by herself, I just can't even imagine. And this woman, she didn't like coffee or tea. So she used smelling salts to keep her up and keep her awake, right? Can you imagine? So she also became the first person to fly across the Pacific, so the other side of the United States. And during that flight, it was recorded that she enjoyed a cup of hot chocolate. And, against her not liking coffee and tea, she liked her sweets. Amelia was also the first person to fly solo from Mexico City to Newark, New Jersey. So today, that's not even a second thought. I think JetBlue flies there every day, probably on the hour. And this woman, she was the first person ever to fly that far.
That's awesome.
Just really cool, right? And, during World War II, Amelia became a nurse's aide in Canada and was tending to wounded soldiers. So, this woman was doing things.
She did a lot.
She did a lot. I didn't even realize what she was doing. And
I love getting this information from you right now because you look like you're giving me a book report with all of your different papers.
I know. I love Amelia because I love flying.
Yeah.
My dad used to bring me up with his friend, Captain Bordenstein, and that was just like so fun. I think next time I'm going to do Annie Oakley because I used to go shooting with my dad too. And he'd call me Barnes, Annie Oakley, Amelia Earhart. Anyway, so Amelia did a lot of great things. And in June 1st, 1937, at the age of 40, Amelia left Miami in hopes to become the first woman to circumnavigate the globe. That means go all the way around, right? A month later, so she had been out there for a month. I didn't realize this. On July 2nd, her radio lost contact. Her search and rescue was the most extensive air and sea search in naval history, and Amelia was never found. So she flew for a whole freaking month, and then the radio went blank. And to imagine that her search and rescue was the most extensive ever.
Yeah.
That's just amazing. And I'm getting this all from the childrensmuseum.org website. And it's in quoted, it says, in a letter to her husband, Amelia wrote, "Please know I am quite aware of the hazards," she said. "I want to do it because I want to do it. Women must try to do things as men have tried. When they fail, their failure must be but a challenge to others." And I just love that, right?
I love that too. Yeah. She's like, I'm doing it because I want to. Well, that goes for anybody. Like,
I do it because I want to do it.
Right. And she, she died doing what she loved.
Yep.
I'm sure she would rather have that happen than,
Exactly.
live in regret.
Exactly, right? And we celebrate Amelia Earhart not only to honor her life and career, but also celebrate Amelia's courage and strength. And I think that's really cool.
That's a good badass woman. That's a good choice.
Yeah.
I like it.
She's freaking badass. And we're going to have another courageous and badass woman on this evening. Courageous and strong woman. Her name is Grace Frahm. We're going to hear more about her story. And let's welcome Grace onto the podcast. Welcome, Grace.
Hi.
Thanks for coming on the show. So nice to see you.
Yes, it's good to see you guys too.
How are you?
Pretty good.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Did you make it down okay?
I did.
You're coming from Longmont, right?
Yeah, it wasn't too bad.
Yeah. I was up there yesterday. I went to that cheese imports. You ever been there?
No.
Oh.
Was it on the corner of like Main and
Terry?
yeah, Main and Second ish?
Yes. Oh
Is
my
it just
gosh.
a cheese store?
You're gonna
Yeah,
love it.
It's like a
Oh,
full
I don't like
cheese
cheese.
store.
It's-
Oh, you don't?
like cheese?
What?
I don't like. Okay, I'm weird. I love mac and cheese, and I love queso. Like I could live off queso. Like so melted cheese. I like cheese on my pizza, but just give me a slice of cheese or a block of cheese. I don't like it. I don't like it.
The whole
Interesting.
time I was thinking it's gift shopped too, kind of, and they have pastries, delicious pastries.
Really?
I was thinking, oh my gosh, Lisa would love this place, and the boys would love it.
I mean, if it's cheese melted in something,
That's so
then I'll
funny.
eat
You don't
it.
like
But I don't
cheese.
like just
Oh, it's
plain
artisan
Block of-
cheese.
oh man, I just eat like plain cheese, like shredded cheese, anything.
Oh.
I know people love cheese. I know.
I love brie. Put it on anything.
Oh, I don't like brie.
brie and
I don't
apples.
like funky cheeses. Like that's
Like if it smells like feet, you want to eat
yeah.
it.
No, I don't like
Oh,
that.
you don't like that.
No.
Blue cheese. Travis hates blue cheese.
I like
Okay, well,
cheddar.
anyway,
Anyways.
cheese import. It was a
Yeah,
lovely place
okay.
just to socialize.
No, cool.
But anyway, so yeah, I was up there. Okay, so I was really excited to have you on the show because I think you're extremely interesting and you're lovely to chat with. And so I know that you have a genetic anomaly
hmm
as well as Lyme's.
hmm
Could you tell us a little bit about your genetic anomaly?
Yes, I can. So I was born with several different genetic anomalies that are not attached to my parents. In 2014, because when I was born, they didn't really have that advanced genetic testing. They did genetic testing of my parents and me, and they came back with nothing. Essentially, they did it under the guise of I have something called craniosynostosis type 3, which is it's extremely rare. It's a craniofacial anomaly that causes the skull to fuse at birth. So then the brain can't grow, so they have to crack the skull and reshape it. And so they were like, oh, let's look for that, make sure that I can't pass it to my children. And there was no match. Like, obviously they know I have it because I had it and they had to fix it. But there was no genetic and everything else that I had. So I have like different things through my hips. I'm missing several ligaments in my knees. I don't have a tibia in my left leg. And so they were just sort of like, what happened? They don't know why. And so the Duke University, where I was actually born in North Carolina. And so in a really small town. So they kind of like shipped me off immediately to Duke and they're like, we don't know what this is. Essentially, like, they expected that I would have severe developmental disabilities. And my mom has told me that pretty much she didn't believe them. Like, she was like, I just don't believe that, we'll just wait and see. And, I always love, my dad always tells me his response was, she doesn't look that bad. Because I was actually born with 6 toes as well. So, and those were removed later on. But yeah, I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they shipped you off right away.
Yeah, to
As a
Duke.
baby.
Mm-hmm.
Tiny little baby off to the hospital.
Yeah.
And you don't remember that, right?
No. My mom said it was a little traumatic for her because they essentially took away her baby within hours of her having it.
For a surgery? Is that why
No.
they
just took to study essentially. I did have like low bilirubin, so they were like putting me under light, but really there was nothing else wrong.
What
I
is
didn't have
that?
trouble breathing.
What's
It's like your liver. So if your mom has a different blood type than you, and I have, I think, what's the rare one? O negative.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
I have
O-negative.
that. Yeah, and so, anyways, it can cause you to have jaundice essentially.
Yeah.
So they
It's
just,
quite a
pretty
few
common.
babies have
Yeah.
jaundice. Yeah.
yeah. So, but yeah, that's And then they just sort of they tried to, figure out what was wrong. And they found one other individual who had it, and he had several internal organ issues. Like mine was all muscular and bone related. And he had like internal, and he died at the age of 18. But he had a similar sort of stature to me. Not really, though.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you're one of a kind as far as you know, as far as this goes. And
That's
it's
cool.
not genetic. So they don't they don't believe that if you were to have children that you would pass anything.
So they have no idea.
Okay.
So they have like been like, well, we'd like you to have children. And I've always had a mixed feeling about that. I don't know that I would ever want to put a child through 22 surgeries and, you know, all of these things that, and who knows, like mine could mutate even further and cause even more severe, different.
It's just changing.
Right. And I also like have had so much hip surgery that
I was
going to
ask, like, would you be okay carrying a child with the hip stuff going on?
Yeah, I just don't know that I would. And I don't know that I want to be
someone's.
Like,
do they pressure you?
It was a little bit of a, we want to see what happens. And I was just at
How
that
did that
point.
make you feel? I would feel like you want to use me as a science experiment. Like, that's really hard.
So I was like, I don't really know that that's for me because, that doesn't really align with, I guess, what I believe is, helping other people. And so I've always sort of been towards the adoption route too. So it's like, I just don't know that, bringing someone into a world where you're not really sure if they're going to have severe genetic anomalies.
Yeah.
So,
but I still think this is amazing that you're one of a kind.
Yeah.
Like that's a special thing.
Yeah.
And you're thriving.
Yes.
Like you're thriving.
Mm-hmm.
You're just like any other person, any other woman, right?
Yeah.
What were these? Can I ask what the 22 surgeries were? Can you even like list them?
Oh yeah.
I'm
absolutely.
curious. And and what length did these all happen? Was that immediately after birth? Was that as you've been just growing as an adult? Or
so all the way up until I was 24 was the last surgery I had. So from birth to 24.
How old are you now?
29.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. So I've been surgery free for 5 years, which is the longest I've ever gone.
Yeah.
And it's been a very different experience. I'm trying to live a life that I've honestly never lived before.
You got married.
Yeah, I got married too. Thank you.
You got your own business.
Sort of. Yeah.
We'll get more into that. Okay, back to these surgeries.
So I mentioned earlier I had 6 toes, so they were actually big toes, so you have to remove the bone. So that was done really early on because
all
you can't.
Big toes?
Yes, 2 big toes actually, and they were the good ones. Like I've seen pictures, and they were pretty. They looked like other people's, and the ones they left me with, like they're not functional. Like
they don't. The wrong ones.
Yeah, they don't touch the ground. But then again, the ones that they took were in the wrong place, so maybe that was the whole. I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, I always thought it's funny. Weirdly, I love people's feet because I think it's interesting to watch people walk because my feet don't work like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they did that. They removed those bones. And
did that help with your walking?
Yes, that's how I learned how to walk. They did it almost immediately. And I had casts on for quite a while when I was little. I think my mom said about 6 months to let those bones heal or, once to let the foot kind of whatever. And I actually learned how to stand up in casts and things like that, which is it was a neat little video to watch that my parents had. But anyways, I also had kind of later on, but I'll kind of start from the feet up. But I had both of my toes that were next to the big toes actually were going under. And so they were causing like staph infections because they were growing under. So it was sort of like they curled. And to stop them from doing that, you like clip the tendon in the back. It's actually a really common surgery.
I actually had that done on one of my toes.
Really?
So I had a bunion removed and then I had the toe like next to it. They call it the hammer toe.
Yeah.
And it was kind of starting to curl. And I think it gets worse as you get older. So he went ahead and just snapped that so that wouldn't happen.
Yeah. And then it just it stops it. Except for mine have decided that they'd still like to go to the left. So it's really weird. They're not going under anymore, but they're just going to the left. So it's whatever.
Yeah.
And then, both my big toes actually also had to be fused because the right one wanted to grow to the left and it no longer fit into a shoe. And the left one was growing up. So the joint on it was
funny.
literally growing up, and it used to be called my monkey toe because I could literally hang it on the edge of like tables and things as a child. um, and then, yeah, I mean, essentially they had it straightened and fused the joint. So like both my toes don't have a joint in them.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, and then I've had some removals of the screw in the left one because it actually started to come out. I was skimboarding and I jammed it, and the screw started, and it was probably the most horrific thing I've ever seen. And I was like, you need to get this out now. So that was one of them as well. And I think actually during that one, so I had my left leg lengthened when I was 8, which is actually one of the biggest surgeries I've had. It was most memorable. I lived in the hospital for quite a while. And that was to lengthen the fibula in order so that I could.
How do they do
walk.
that?
How do they do it? It's really actually cool.
Yeah.
It's actually evolved a lot. And the doctor that I had, 21.
This is the Shriners.
Yeah, yeah. So the doctor I had 21 years ago, still practicing. And he,
Good hospital.
back then I was one of the youngest patients they'd ever done. And it's a huge, 2 discs that are like metal discs that are connected with all these bars around it. So it kind of extends about this far outside the leg. And then there's, I think 8 pins, big ones, and then like several little ones, and they all stabilize the bone. And then in the back, there's a knob that you turn, and it slowly pulls. Like he essentially breaks the bone.
It sounds very painful.
It's yeah. And because I was younger, I didn't realize the mechanics of like, if you leave your leg bent at 90 degrees for a long time, it's going to get stuck like that. So then I had a brace that actually had to then straighten my knee out at the same time while I was separating the bone. But it was really, it worked. And that was that was the coolest
like
thing.
magic.
Yeah. And it was really cool because I remember being like, showing my friends. I had this 3-inch lift before I had it done. And I'd be like, and it's like, guess what? I'm going to be cool. I'm going to have like regular shoes. And I was like 7 before I had it done. And my friends were like, yeah, okay. I was like, but you have no idea. I'm going to be cool.
How long were you living there in the hospital?
I lived there for, I think it was 5 months, but an 8-year-old's perception might be distorted. I'm pretty sure it was because I had surgery in like mid-October, I think, but then I don't know really when I got out. But it was definitely, I was so young, but I remember there were lots of things that I learned how to do there. And I lived on my own. My parents visited during the weekend, and my mom's best friend actually lives in St. Louis where the hospital was, and they pretended to be my family and would come and, take me away. And, I got to go spend time with them. And we went to school, and we had to attend like extracurricular activities in which I refused for a while until I got threatened to go to them. So, and that's actually where I learned how to swim. It was a threat and a bribe. You need to go swim now because it was like helpful to,
Right.
for the bone and all of that. But it was super scary to get into water with like this huge device on. And I finally did, and I was bribed with ice cream. And so, it worked. And that was kind of where I fell in love with swimming though.
Yeah. And you love swimming.
Yeah.
And your swimming has been a huge part of your life.
Yeah.
I know we got away from the 22
Yeah, sorry.
surgeries.
Yeah. Sorry.
It is a lot to list.
But
Yeah.
this is cool,
Yeah.
I mean, they branch off, right?
Yeah.
We can we have all these different topics.
Well, and it's a huge part of my life. I mean, that's pretty
Absolutely.
much what shaped every aspect of my life.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
happened every, at least twice a year, if not, maybe I had a year in between, but it was my whole, 24 years of life. So yeah, I had that done. And then some other like big ones were I had double hip reconstruction. So I started with the left one in 2009. No, sorry, the right one in 2009. And that one was pretty well destroyed by the time we got there. I kind of would just wait until it completely failed. Anything would completely fail. And I'd be like, okay, fine, I'll fix it,
Yeah.
because they also weren't sure, why would you fix something? And hip reconstruction is so big and so risky because I've seen it messed up before. It's horrific to watch somebody with a messed up hip reconstruction. It like grinds when they walk. It was anyways. But so I did that when I was 19. And that one, it went well, but I still have trouble with it. It's just the way that it was. They had to reform the entire ball and socket and then turn the femur in. So it was like a full reshape. And then they put in like I don't know, maybe 6 screws that were in there, and they were long. I mean, very long. And so that actually, because when you turn the femur, it makes the leg a little bit longer. That actually caused a leg difference.
Yeah.
And
How
so
tall are you?
4'8" now. I was 4'10" at one point. But yeah, and so when they did that, they had to shorten my femur. So after like a couple years later, it was like, this is really, because then my back was hurting. You know, it wasn't enough to like get another leg lengthening, but the easy way out is to shorten it. So you basically cut, you know, piece of the bone out, and then you put a big titanium rod in and call it done. It's actually fairly easy. Compared
easy.
Relatively. But now they actually, this is the side thing, now they actually lengthen limbs with a magnet. So they essentially put in that same rod, but it's magnetic, and they like run a magnet over it and pull the leg apart. There's no external fixator. Anyways, that's really cool.
That's really neat.
Kind of wish, you know, I had that. But
Right.
yeah, so then I had the left hip reconstruction in 2014. So that was the last one that I had. And it went much better. I actually had to have the screws removed in the right because they were pinching a part of my back. But the left one, I've never had them removed. The left one really never, I don't know if it's just because I can't feel it as well or whatever, but it's really never bothered me. It did obviously because it was out enough. And they kind of did the same thing, but it definitely wasn't as difficult. And the scar is much smaller because medicine had advanced in 5 years, which was really cool too. When they did the right one, there was not enough skin to close it. So there was actually a hole at the top. And I mean, when I woke up, I remember being like, it's on fire because it was burning. It was pulling because they were like, yeah, we didn't really, you know, we tried to pull as much as we could. And it's like, yikes. The left one, though, however, is like, you know, none of that. And
thank God.
much smaller. I actually had I had the same attending doctor who did both of them. And he actually did my toe surgeries too. I mean, he didn't do the leg lengthening, but he did the other ones. And he had different fellows that were under him. And I would say the fellow that did the left one might be a little bit better. He had better bedside manner.
But that counts.
It really did, because, you know, I'm probably more responsive to someone, you know, after meeting with doctors for years and years. But so then we'll go up. So my shoulders and my back and everything is totally fine. I've never had surgery on any of them. Yeah, and my arms have always been better than my legs. I always said, you know, if I could walk on my arms, life would be great because like there's no they do hyperextend, but I just don't have really any issues with them. But I've heard that I guess the joints are all shaped differently, but they work. So who cares? Yeah. And then I had my head when I was really little. They had, you know, cracked the skull and they put in metal plates. And it's been quite a discovery to figure out I cannot have MRIs because it heats up the plate. And they've tried to find out the metal in it, but they've never been able to find out the exact type of metal that was used in 1990. But I do know that I've been in an MRI machine and I actually got a concussion. I can't remember when this was. Maybe 2013.
Oh my God.
It was terrifying.
Do you go off in the metal detectors?
Sometimes. Only in CVS and Walgreens, actually, which is really funny. And then like in the airport, there's a little piece of like almost like shrapnel in my left leg from my like when they were taking out the screws, and that always goes off. And it's like
my dad has the metal plates. Same. Yeah. I don't know if he was born with the cranios like we're talking about here. He might have been, but he has a metal plate because his weren't fusing. So that's the opposite.
Yeah, that's the opposite. Huh. Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but
I
just think it's so interesting.
It is interesting. Right? So yeah, and then so they did that, and then my parents chose to have my ears kind of pinned back. They looked a little elf-like, so that was actually a cosmetic sort of, you know, let's make it so they look a little less weird and pointy. And
people pay now for that, by the way,
which is weird. I mean, I just like I think that it was a good thing because I'm sure that they were probably a little too much. But what else? So I also had, when I was born, with a cleft chin and a cleft chest. So there was a hole in my chest and I have like two little marks on my chin that people are like, oh, did you hit your chin? I've actually had people say that. And it's no, actually, those are birthmarks, essentially. They were, you know, kind of sewn back together, but, you know, people have cleft palates. Mine somehow moved down into my chin and my chest. So then they also kind of reshaped my chin and made me have a chin. I essentially didn't really have one.
Yeah. And it looks real good.
Thanks. Yeah, well, thank them, I guess. They made it look pretty. And then I was born with, it's called ptosis, which is like regular people who don't have genetic anomalies have ptosis, but theirs is not usually, I had no muscle in my eyelid. So they just were down, essentially. But I would like look up so that I could see people. And then when I was about 4, they took a piece of my leg as a muscle and they put it in to like open up my eyes, basically. But it wasn't really enough. By the time I was like 12, they came out with Gore-Tex. They actually use, the mixture of rubber, what they use in jackets and things like that. They use that in my eyelids, and it has worked. I can tell sometimes if I'm tired, they droop a little bit, but that material, but it freaks people out because like when I'm sleeping, my eyes automatically open. So I do have to put it's like a Vaseline eye thing in it.
Keep them moist. You'd never know. I'm looking at you right now. You would never know.
It's good. Yeah.
It's really, and again, like with your chin, and I would like have never guessed any of this.
It's just like amazing to learn all the the medical possibilities of things. How brilliant these people are that can figure this stuff out to make this stuff possible.
Gore-Tex.
The Gore-Tex. It's really crazy. And they've asked me before, do you want us to do it again? And it's like, no, I really, they're fine. When I'm tired, they definitely do droop a little bit more. But to be honest, like if I can see, why have more?
Yeah.
And they've asked me if I wanted my head reshaped because my forehead is, pretty small, but why?
Yeah.
It's fine. I'm used to it,
Why would you want to cosmetically go through? You've gone through so much.
Why would I want to do anymore? I want to fix what's wrong and not I'm not here for a beauty pageant.
Yeah. And you are beautiful though.
Oh, thank you.
Gosh, Grace, I just can't imagine all of that you have gone through, and to have you sitting here in front of us and you have this big smile and this light and you're still so positive. What was that like having to grow up, having to go through all of this and being, I assume you had to miss a lot of school, and like, what was that like?
So my mom, I mentioned before, she's super positive. So her sister actually was born with cerebral palsy. And it's not like she's pretty high functioning. I guess I come from a perspective where I believe that pretty much everybody is intelligent. And she can read and write. And, there are like some things. But, and she lives in a group home. But my grandma also was very progressive and was very much like, this was the 70s and like, put her in all these therapies so that she could walk. And I think that's where probably some of my mom's like, because my mom they told my parents I would probably never walk. And my mom actually has videos of me when I was standing, because I had no ligaments, of going in circles, like just trying to balance, like trying to hold that, and, my mom just, like, she maintained that, positivity of, like, you can do this. And I think that was always and she definitely pushed me. When I was 8, I was supposed to be, like, after I moved home from the hospital, I was supposed to be walking without crutches, and I refused to. And one morning I woke up and they were gone. And she had removed them. And so I had no choice. If I wanted breakfast, I had no choice but to walk. I actually crawled the first, all the way to the stairwell, and then I was like, fine, I'll walk. But that kind of like, I needed that. And that's how I've always been, is that a little bit of push, but like, just that, kind of like, okay, like, we're going to fix this and it's going to get better. And, I don't know, I almost had like a mentality. Every time I had surgery, I knew like, and I had to learn, I did all PT by myself. My parents helped me, but I never went to like a facility or anything. And it was all, driven, and I relearned how to walk by myself, and, or, kind of like with, them teaching me kind of at the hospital. But like, then by the time, I had my last 2 hip surgeries, it was like, okay, I know that you have to go from your heel to your toe, and learning how to, I guess, do that. But then with school, really the only school I missed was when I was living in St. Louis. And when I was 8, and I actually went to a Montessori school, which was amazing. That's literally how I learned everything. Because I mentioned and when I told you guys I do have like I guess a learning disability per se, but that a lot of times is from the amount of anesthesia I've had. That's probably the cause of what I've been
it's
told.
not dyslexia.
No, it's
right?
some of it has to do with auditory because my ears are shaped a little bit differently. So sometimes it's processing, but it's I've obviously learned how to figure all that out.
You're a
and-
successful woman.
yeah. And so that was really like, and because I went to that Montessori school, I mean, I went to school at Shriners and all my stuff was sent there. And then I think this is a little bit of my stubbornness, but when I had my surgery in 2009, not only was I swimming for at the college level, but in the Paralympics, and I had surgery, and I was going to go to school, and I was determined. I actually transferred schools. I went to my freshman year in Portland, Oregon, and then I went out to Stony Brook University in New York. And I was just like, I'm going to do it. And I remember thinking, this is the worst idea I've ever done when I got there in September, because I still couldn't walk. I was on crutches and, there was so much ahead of me. But I was pretty determined not to miss any school. And then in high school, I didn't actually have that many surgeries. I had a couple like ear, because I had some tubes and I got a hole in my ear actually from swimming. And so there were, but nothing really too much in high school. So
Unbelievably independent. It was like you were made for this life.
Maybe.
I
think
and the
my mom
perseverance.
did that, though.
But I know, but you like went with it.
Yeah,
And I love how you described you came from a long line of very strong women.
Yeah.
Because look, you are one of those strong women today.
Yeah.
I mean, we're listening to your story. I'm just like, and you just kept going.
Yeah.
And you got the smile on your face while you're sitting here,
Yeah.
right? This is your story. I'm like, this is her story.
Yeah.
It's nobody else's. And what a cool thing to share with us today.
Yeah.
Right? Lisa, were you going to ask something?
No, well, I did have one question, before we get too far off topic, because I do think this is important to know. And we've kind of touched on different things with other people about, just being of privilege and race and all of these different topics, and having something where you may look different, or you have a contraption on your leg, and I want to know what is the proper, what do you wish that you could tell people? Like, do you want to tell people it's okay to ask me questions, or don't ask me, like, what do you want people to know?
So I've always been on the path of ask me questions. It's like when I was younger, it was really, really difficult for me I knew that I was different, but I also was taught that there was nothing wrong with being different. Like, that I was beautiful in my own way, and, just because I didn't have the toes that everyone had and whatever. Yeah, I've always sort of been like, I'd rather that you ask a question than stare. And even now with having Lyme disease, like and I have a PICC line in my arm, I would rather people ask about it than stare at me. And that's even when because I worked with kids with autism and other disabilities, that, asking, I find most often that parents would rather somebody ask and then stare at their child, because they don't understand, like I saw yesterday, I was actually, people stare at things that are different, which I always find interesting. And I've had I was in Boulder actually, and this little girl walked by me and she goes, "That's a tiny adult." And the mom goes, "Some people are short and some people are tall." And I was just stunned by that, because that when I grew up in Indiana, and I've never really heard parents say that. That was an amazing thing. You should teach your children that. And I had another little girl at daycare. She literally walked up to me and was like, "You're really cool and your feet are really cool." And that's some of that I think comes from parents, and it's always asking that being different's okay.
Well, and kids are just naturally curious,
Yeah.
and they have no filter,
right? And they shouldn't be shunned for that,
right? And that's the thing, is parents are like, oh, don't say that. Oh, be quiet, or and it's like, no, I mean, what's the proper, what do you say, And it's like, I don't think that the shaming or the ignoring is the right thing, because.
Right.
It's like, yes, let's be curious, because we all are different. We all have different color, hair, skin, eyes, we're tall, we're short, we're fat, we're
Yeah.
skinny, or, like
Yeah.
ask a question.
Yeah.
And then let's embrace it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really neat with my pick line. I like to kind of see now that I have that perspective and I'm not as like, a little bit, I guess, not a child anymore. I've been through a lot and seen a lot. And, I love when people ask and they're like, oh, what's it for? Or, but I've definitely had people stare. And I had somebody come in. My husband used to give me infusions at King Supers. I actually just learned how to do my infusions on my own with some extensions, but he was doing them and I had my IV pole and somebody walked into the break room and just stared. It wasn't an employee. It was like somebody that was shopping at the store and they just stared. And I turned around and I should have said something, but it just made me uncomfortable. And it's like, what do you say? But it was really neat that even seeing like their employees at the store he works at embrace that. I mean, they're just amazing. What can we get you? How can we help you? Are you doing okay? That's how it should be, but I don't know.
I love that when you answered one of the questions of what are some of your hobbies is people watching. So on this topic.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting, to be on that other side of things, but to also, again, this curiosity, even as adults, right?
Yeah.
But now we have this new thing, maybe we were shamed or something like that. So we're
Right.
hesitant to ask those questions.
Yeah.
But do you enjoy people watching?
I do.
I do too.
It's really, it's so interesting because people have behavior. So I am a behavior interventionist. So I watch behavior. I study behavior. I can pretty well understand when you're talking to someone and they're not listening, like they might. I have this sometimes. People ask you a question, they don't care about the answer. I mean, when I was a kid, that's kind of what I would watch how people react. And my husband and I went downtown into Denver. We went to a comedy show and I had to wear my mask because my white blood cell is so low. And
that's an oxygen mask, right?
No, it's just like a cover mask. It just keeps like a hospital mask.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm like, is she on oxygen these days?
Infections, right?
Yeah. To prevent infections.
I feel like you and I talked about it, or maybe I read about it. So I'm like, oh my God, when did that start happening? So it was just a regular old mask. Okay,
It just keeps, my immune system, if somebody coughs or whatever.
Smart. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're wearing that downtown?
Yeah, so I was wearing that downtown, and I have a set of black ones that I feel like make me look like a ninja. And I was wearing that, and I was like, told my husband, I said, watch people's responses, because we were down by 16th Street and like all of that, and people would walk by, and some people wouldn't be phased, and other people would just be like, their mouth wide open, staring, and it's so funny to me now. It used to really bother me, but now it's like, you should, society, I feel like, has moved to the point where, you should ask instead of stare. But
embrace that shit.
Embrace it. I'm just all right, whatever. You don't understand my situation. Even when I first started wearing a mask, I don't know, almost a year ago, it was really uncomfortable. And people do look at you, or they're afraid. I've had a mother pull her child away from me in a grocery store, and I really wanted to say, you do know it's because I can't get whatever you have.
Right. And I think that is probably because, you go into the doctor. I think as a parent, maybe you go into the doctor and they have the mask and they're like, if you have a cough, you put this mask on.
Right.
And so some people might think the opposite.
It should say, if you don't want to get sick, wear this mask.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that that's changed for you, though. That, it was uncomfortable at first. Sure, for any of us, right?
Yeah.
When we wear a new piece of clothing, when we are at a new job, when something new in general, right? We're uncomfortable at first.
Yeah.
And then we grow into it, right? Do you even feel different?
Yeah, sometimes. It's taken me a long time to grow into my pick line. We become friends. It's been taking.
How long have you had it?
Almost 4 months.
And could you describe to our listeners what that looks like and what it is?
So it is a catheter. It's a peripherally inserted catheter into the heart. So it goes into the superior vena cava.
Whoa.
I think that's how you say it.
I didn't know it was connected to the heart.
So it goes straight in. And that's when you put medicine in, it literally pumps itself into the heart and then pumps into the bloodstream almost instantly.
Where is it?
So
it's in your arm, though?
Yeah.
And so you have to be very careful with that and keeping that clean, correct?
Yeah. So it is covered up by a sterile dressing. And there are two, they call them lumens, and those lumens come off and they separate from the internal catheter. So they call it a butterfly, and the butterfly then separates into these two, but then it goes into one, into the body. And
Love your tattoos.
Oh, thank you. just pulled on them.
When did
but-
you first get it?
I got it in the end of July. And so
Is it because of for the limes
yeah.
specifically?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it treats that. And so I have these little extensions on there now to do it
Yeah.
myself, which
It's
is
purple.
It's yeah, so they're always purple. Well, I guess the Bard, I've studied a lot about them,
Yeah.
but I had a single lumen for a while, for about 2 months, and that was just, it was super easy. It had its own clamp, so I never had to clamp it, which was super nice too. And then so when I got to Longmont, I had kind of a rough start at the hospital there, and it got accidentally pulled out about 5 centimeters. So then the internal part, and that's about as far as you can pull it out. However, it was still somehow, for whatever reason, it was still in the right vein in the heart. So they left it in, and it came all the way out to 9. And then they finally decided, because at 9 it was sitting up here, and it's supposed to be down about here. But I kind of missed that one because I had 1, and they gave me one with 2, and I have to clamp, but whatever. But yeah, it's really become a part of me, and I have to have that dressing changed every week.
Is this experimental?
No.
So this is
PICC
something other people with Lymes are actually
Is it
using?
like an antibiotic? Like what are you infusing with? I guess
Antibiotics.
Okay.
So for Lyme disease, they use antibiotics, and right now it's a heavy dose of doxycycline, which
doxycycline.
yeah. So
Like
you're
for yeah.
like normal, but it's at at 400 milligrams.
Huh.
So how long will you have to do this, or do you know?
I don't know. So it was sort of, laid out to me like, okay, like, you're going to have this for a while. So I tried oral antibiotics for 4 months, and it made me very, very sick. The week of my wedding, I was probably the sickest I'd ever been.
Bummer.
I just could not, and I was super skinny and just like not, I was like, I can't, like, I'm about to go into my wedding. So my doctor was like, look, just don't take anything, like, for the week, just stop everything. And I actually had a really good day of my wedding. I didn't feel too
good.
sick. So that was good.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I said, I think I'm done. Like, and it was a really hard thing for me to turn over because I knew it would change my life a lot. And I knew that I probably wouldn't be able to work anymore.
What are the symptoms
of Lyme disease?
Yeah, like what is these antibiotics helping?
Okay, so Lyme disease does a lot of different things in
I was going to
everyone.
say it's like one of those has a big scale of all kinds of stuff, right?
So back to people watching, I like to Facebook group watch. They have a Lyme disease support group, and it is like watching a slow moving train wreck. And I'm sorry for anybody that's listening that likes that, but I cannot, I watch it just to because people they're not looking for the solution. And in Lyme disease, I've always been I'm looking for the solution, and some of that
sounds like that's a theme in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Looking for a solution.
And I definitely think that my recovery has helped with that, which I don't think we've talked about. But I'm in recovery from drugs and alcohol, and some of that had to do with my surgeries, but whatever. And so my recovery has helped with finding that solution. So I've been sick for about 2 years before. So I had a year clean in my sobriety when I found out that I was really sick. I couldn't move. One day I literally woke up and I could not move. And I was drooling, and I was just like, oh, what's wrong? And, they were like, oh, okay.
Was it from Lyme's meds?
No. So back then I didn't know I had Lyme. So it was, I didn't find out that I had Lyme disease until January till January of this year. And then I actually found a good doctor in May. So it took a while.
So it's new.
Yeah. It's fairly recent, or I guess April is when.
Yeah.
So I woke up one day and I couldn't move. I was drooling, and where I worked and lived, she was like, oh, other people have the flu. You should go and get tested. So I drive down, and I'm not really coherent, but I drive down the mountain and I get tested. I don't have Lyme. So, and at the time, due to my drug use, I caused adrenal insufficiency. So I take hydrocortisone because I cannot make cortisol. And so they're like, oh, which is a steroid. They're like, oh, just give yourself more steroids. Well, I did, she upped it a little bit, and I was fine. It went away. And so then we were caught in this cycle of okay, every time it got worse, here's more. I went to UC Health in Aurora, and It was just caught in this, here's more steroids. And then we kind of stopped at, a certain level that's not very good for you. And everybody's like, oh, you need to get off steroids. Well, I can't. Every time I did, I got worse and I would drool. And even with the steroids, like, it's just, the drooling was probably, and I'd choke. So I would choke on my own spit. And for me, it was and I had tremors and.
Was all of this because of your dependence now on the steroids, or was this because of
the Lyme disease? That was all. So these were all the things that I had, and they were treating it with hydrocortisone.
Wow.
Basically for 2 years. And, and they kind of said at the very end, they're like, oh, hey, like, here's a wheelchair. We think this is just some type of muscular dystrophy because you have all these other things. And a lot of times doctors, they look at my whole life and they don't think about the common things because Lyme disease is common. Right. And I've never lived in the city until the last 2 years. And so I've always lived in the country or in the mountains. I've pulled off hundreds of ticks and just been like, whatever, never going to get Lyme disease. You guys don't have it in Colorado. And, to come to find out, there's actually another individual that I worked with on the mountain 3 months later also got Lyme disease. And, it's everywhere. It's
spreading.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's huge. It's just, and there's some, stuff out there that says that it's sexually transmitted, which I don't know that that's really, who knows how valid that is, but there's a lot of, different things.
Well, it's really awesome I love that you have the attitude of, okay, well, what can I do about it? Mm-hmm. And then you're doing something about it. I love that about your whole story and your whole life. And you have that, like, I'm going to pick myself up. I fell down. I'm going to pick myself up and, let's look for the bright side and what can I do?
Yeah.
And I see here I know you were talking about behavioral and studying, you like to people watch and study people's behaviors, and you have a master's degree in social work.
I do. Yeah.
And so I think that that's really awesome of, someone who you just were like, had all of this stuff going on and could have used that at any moment as an excuse. Mm. But you went through and, I don't have a master's. Like, that's really awesome.
So it was kind of neat. I got my undergrad in social work in New York, and it was really, I really loved it. Like, I've always loved people and, just like helping people. I think that was kind of like, I watched a lot of how I grew up and how I was treated and like, how that changes how you go through life. And I actually had an experience when I was 8. When I was living at the hospital, so I'm very allergic to codeine, and they had given me codeine, and I had actually gotten Hulk-like is how you could describe it. I, ripped things off of people as an 8-year-old, which I think would be terrifying. I see 8-year-olds now, and I'm like, oh dear,
you must be tiny too.
Yeah, oh, tiny, yeah, and I was held down in like a restraint by a psychologist. And she then told me my mom was never going to come back and get me. And it was like absolutely horrific.
What the fuck?
And my mom didn't come back for 2 days.
Oh my
she
gosh.
was still there, but she was like, the psychologist said it wrong because my mom was like, just tell her I need her to calm down and, then we're going to come back and, we're still here. And the psychologist chose to tell her that she was never coming back. So I truly believed like any 8-year-old,
oh my gosh.
they're never coming back.
Oh my God. That's horrible.
And that was when I was supposed to be going home and that might be a little mixed up, but I know that was definitely an event, and that kind of made me go, I want to be a social worker. I don't ever want to watch that or have that happen to any other child, because that was a misuse of, first of all, I don't believe in restraints at all. I think that, unless it's like somebody is really, really violent, but an 8-year-old is not violent enough to, do anything. And so that kind of like made me jump into that. And then, after I got my bachelor's, there's like a way to, it's like an accelerated entrance into a master's. And so I went back to Indiana, where I was from, and did a 1.5 years. Actually delayed it a little bit to work at a camp for kids with disabilities. And then I started in like the spring of 2013 and then graduated in June of 2014. So it's a year and a half. And it was great. I actually did my internship at the camp that I worked at before I started. So I had worked there all the way through.
Is that what you prefer, is to work with children?
Yes. Yeah. I really enjoy working with children, and specifically, so I made my own concentration, and I found somebody to sponsor it when I was in grad school, and it was children with disabilities and outdoor therapeutic recreation. So it wasn't like recreation therapy, but it was basically using social work because I had watched all these kids at this camp I worked at. And they were part of the hospital that I kind of grew up in as well. Not Shriners, but it's called Riley Hospital in Indiana. And watch them do things they had never done. I mean, I watched a girl who had severe seizures, and they're like, you never make it to the top of the climbing wall. And when she was a senior in high school, she made it to the top. I'd had her for 2 years before that, and she, get halfway, cry. She made it to the top, and it was probably the best thing I've ever watched, because she is capable. And that's I always, it's people are more capable than they believe. And, nobody is limited by anything, which is, that's kind of why, and I mentioned a little bit, so I got to my first year of college, and I don't know what made it stand out. And I think it was because my English teacher was also happened to be part of, what they called student support, or, people who have kind of learning disabilities. She's like, I really think, because I was really bad at grammar. Everything else, I could write a sentence and all of that and, do everything else, but I was really bad at it. And I've always been bad at it. And she's like, I think you need to go be tested. And when I got tested, the results came back, and he was like, I don't even know how you made it this far. You shouldn't be able to read. You shouldn't be able to do, because if you give me a word I've never seen before, I can't tell you anything. I literally can't do anything with it. But if I hear it, so I learned how to read because I learned how to hear it. So my mom read everything out loud, and so did my grandma. And, then I learned almost like echoing, but really figured out. So I don't read words per se. It's all sight.
That's cool.
So you could see the word in front of you, and you hear it, and then okay, that's what that word looks like.
Yeah.
Not necessarily sounding things out.
Right.
But you're just memorize what the word
memorization.
And the sound.
Yeah. So memorization really saved me. So I can spell really well because when I was younger, I was in spell bowl. My parents used to write me 100 times the same, word. And I just, did it. And then I knew how to spell very, very well. And that memorization just kind of I was figured out early on, okay, if I just memorize this, I say it enough times, I can do it. I can throw it back on a test. Yeah. That was essentially how I did everything.
That's an asset to have.
Right. And he was but I do have, it's called an auditory, there's several different things. One of them is an auditory, learning, deficit. So if you're talking to me and I'm not paying attention to you, or, it's not directly at you and I'm not watching you, and I might not get all the instructions. So I had somebody's a note taker essentially, and then would sit there and go over. But this is because I went to a small liberal arts college, and I actually, these services carried with me all the way through. So extra time. And that was really valuable because when I do take tests, it does take a little bit longer for me to read it. And however, I did pass my social work licensure without accommodations. I, learned how to do things without the accommodations that I've been given because I already, grew up without them. And they were nice to have to learn more, I guess.
Yeah. And you're a great writer. I read some of your blog.
Yeah.
You can write very well.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I love just the message that comes out of you of, the perseverance, but then also you tie it back in and you're like, no, my mom, you're very thankful and appreciative of the fact that your parents helped you so much, and it sounds like really you probably had a lot of people help you along the way.
You got lucky.
And that's amazing. And I love that about you and your story. And I appreciate you so much just coming on here and talking to us about it and being real about it and about all of the different things and teaching us and it's teaching us that it's okay to ask questions and to be curious. And then that's how we get to know each other and get to have compassion for each other and get to learn things is is by asking questions and not shying away, and
Yep.
that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay that I don't know
Right.
what I don't know,
Yeah.
and it's okay for me to ask, and you know.
And we're all so similar, regardless of what that.
Yeah.
And we got these stories. Again,
Yeah.
here's another story we haven't yet heard on the show, which I don't think we're ever going to hear again on this show. And I asked you, do you ever feel different? And I thought to myself, how many times do I feel
Yeah.
different?
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, we're all in the same boat. We're all
Yeah.
experiencing the same things. And what a wonderful way to come together. Let's
Mhm.
be friends. Let's talk about these things.
Right.
Let's give back. Let's share with other people.
Yeah.
Because we're all the freaking
Yeah.
same.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's one of the coolest things.
It's a cool
and,
world.
And I've learned that in my recovery too. And, just like in the Paralympics and in all these things that like, I'm not alone. That's like one of the biggest things is like, I'm not alone and I'm not that different. I'm not super unique. Like, yes, I'm unique and have these features. However, I, am still somebody in recovery
Yep.
who, just like lots of other people and, that, are battling addiction. Like I still have that same mentality of, I guess for lack of a better words, I'm allergic to drugs. I literally cannot touch them. And, or like even in the Paralympics, I have a physical disability too, technically. Now, do I ever look at it like that? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't ever go, oh yeah, I have a physical
But
disability.
you're an athlete.
Yeah. And I mean, that's part of it too, is I feel like if I ever stopped moving, I wouldn't be where I am today. I think if I were just be like, oh, I'd rather not do sports or any, then I probably wouldn't be able to walk. That's probably true,
Yeah.
Like, so
No, I
it's-
mean, that's amazing. I
like-
mean, you say, these disabilities in learning, and you have a master's, physical limitations, you're an athlete, you swam in the Paralympics. I know you haven't talked about it on the show, but you like to aqua jog. Like that's the one thing is like you find a way.
Yeah.
And you could, if you put your mind to it and your heart into it,
Yeah.
and you can get help and you can do it. And I
Right.
love that. And I thank you so much for coming on here and
Yeah.
sharing
Thanks for
that with
coming.
us.
Yeah.
It's
I
been
love it.
amazing.
The beautiful uniqueness, right?
Yeah.
We can really make that our assets, even though it might seem like it's not something you'd want.
Yeah.
But what a beautiful, unique thing about you. All of these things. So thank you so much again.
Thank you
Thank you,
guys
Grace.
for
Glad you
having
came on.
me.
Is there anything you'd like to plug before we wrap up?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. All right.
Thank you,
We'll wrap it up.
Grace.
Thanks, Grace.
If you have an interesting story, something funny, something sad, something you want the world to know, please email us. We want you to share your experiences with us. We'll take these, we'll collect them, we'll do some episodes sometimes where we'll read them. So if you want to be anonymous, please just let us know. We won't read your name. If you want your name read, then we will. But send us those stories, comments to info@herturntotalkpodcast.com. And we also ask if you like what you're hearing, please rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you.